Welcome back, legends. My name is Abhishek, and I have started this channel to talk about everything and anything about anime. So, listen, I need you to be honest with me for a second. When was the last time an anime didn't just entertain you, but actually made you sit there in silence, thinking about life? Because that's exactly what Frieren Beyond Journey's End does. And I was not ready for it, like at all. I went in expecting a chill fantasy anime. You know, magic, adventure, some fights, and maybe few emotional moments here and there. This show starts after the hero already wins, and that alone should tell you something is different. Pause for a second and think about it. Every fantasy which you ever watched ends at the victory. Frieren starts there. And suddenly you realize that this is not about saving the world. It's about what happens when the world is already saved. And life just keeps on going. And bro, that hits. Because nobody prepare you for that part. Not anime, not movie, not even real life. We are all chasing goals, chasing moments, chasing the big win. But what happens after? What happens when everything is slowed down? What happens when the people who made this journey meaningful aren't there anymore? That's where Frieren lives. And that's why it feels so different. Now I got to ask you something, and I want real answer in the comments. Did this anime hook you instantly, or did it take you few episodes to realize, wait, this is something special? Because for me, episode 1 already felt heavy. Not dramatic heavy, not cry your eyes out heavy, but this quiet, uncomfortable, real kind of heavy. Like something you didn't expect to feel from an anime. And here's the crazy part, this show barely raises its voice. No constant screaming, not even over the top drama, no forced hype, and yet it hits harder somehow than most of the action animes out there. Why? Because it understands something that most of the stories forget. Silence can be louder than explosions. Let me say that again. Silence can be louder than explosions. And Frieren proves that again and again. Also, quick check. If Frieren is still your rank 1 anime right now, drop a fire in the comments. I am actually curious to see how many of you are still logged in with this show. Another thing, this anime doesn't rush you, and I know it's 2026 and it sounds illegal. We are used to the fast pacing, quick dopamine, and constant simulation. But Frieren, it tells you to slow down, to sit with moments, and actually feels them. And at first, it might feel weird, but once it clicks, you don't want any other way. And here's a question which I didn't expect to ask myself watching anime. Am I appreciating people enough? Yeah, this show will do that to you. Because at its core, Frieren is not about magic. It's not even about adventures. It's about time and how differently we all experience it. Alright, before we go deeper, just remember this one thing. This isn't a hype anime. This is a reflection anime. And once it gets you, it doesn't let go. Let's talk about the moment that changes everything. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. An elf standing there, watching someone she traveled with, someone who cared for her, someone who understood her, fade away. And only then she realizes she never tried to understand them. That's painful, not in a loud way, in a quiet, creeping. This feels too real way. Because here's the truth, Frieren had time, too much time, and that became a problem. When you think you have forever, you stop paying attention. You stop appreciating the moments. You assume there will always be another chance, another conversation, another memory. But humans, we don't have that luxury. And Frieren slowly starts to understand that too late. And that is what makes this story powerful. No sadness, no tragedy, but regret. And regret hits different because it's not something that happens to you, it's something you realize. Now think about your own life for a second. How many moments did you brush off? How many people did you think, I will talk to them later? That's what this show forces you to confront. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it is also important. And what I love is this show doesn't punish her. It doesn't say you failed. It says you still have time to learn. That's what balances everything. Because Frieren isn't just about loss. It's about growth after loss. And watching her slowly, awkwardly, almost clumsily try to understand emotions is most of the human things I have seen in an anime. And it's funny too. Let's be real. She is this ancient, insanely powerful mage, but socially clueless. Like, bro, you can destroy demons, but you don't understand basic human feelings.
だって恥ずかしいし、そんなことを言っている場合ですか?
That contrast is genius, and it makes every small moment feels meaningful. A conversation, a memory, even a simple walk, because now she is paying attention. Alright, now let's switch a gear a little bit, because now we need to talk about this world. This is one of the most grounded fantasy world I have seen in a long time. And I don't mean realistic, like boring. I mean structured. Magic in Frieren actually feels like a system and not just random power-ups. There are rules, there are limitations, history behind spells, and that make everything feels more believable. Because when magic have no rules, nothing matters. But here, every spell is earned. Even small spells like opening locks, cleaning clothes, finding things, and that's something I love. Not everything has to be about destruction. Also, can we talk about mimic chest? That running gag is hilarious and also low-key genius because it shows even someone experienced like Frieren can still make dumb mistakes, and that's what makes her relatable. Another thing, every location feels lived in. The villages aren't just the side quests, they have history, people, and stories. You actually feels like this world existed before the anime started. And that's rare. Also, a quick question. Do you prefer hard magic system like this or more mysterious, unexplained magic? Let me know, I am curious where you stand. because Frieren proves you can have depth without overwhelming the audience. Now let's talk about the part that surprises me the most, the demons. Because they aren't your typical villains. They don't just hate humans, they don't rage, they don't scream. They observe, they adapt, they mimic. And that's terrifying. They don't understand emotions, but they pretend to just enough to manipulate. That's way more unsettling than any other loud villain. And then the biggest twist, to them, Frieren is the monster. Let that sink in. The calm, quiet, slightly awkward elf is basically their worst nightmare. That flip is incredible writing because suddenly you realize that power doesn't need to be loud, and Frieren proves that again and again. Now let's talk about the characters. Fern, probably the most responsible person in the group. Acts like adult but still has her own emotional layers. Then there is Stark, overcoming fear, growing into himself. And together they feel like a real group, not just characters. And that found family dynamics, it hits hard. Because by the end, you don't just like them, you feel like you know them. And that's why the ending works, because it doesn't need to be loud. It just stays with you. And that's the real power of this anime. It doesn't just tell a story, it changes how you look at time, at people, and honestly, that's rare. If you haven't watched Frieren yet, go watch the first 3 episodes. Seriously. And then come back. And if you have already watched it, I want to know what moment hits you the hardest. Drop in the comments. I read everything. If this video made you think even a little differently, hit like, subscribe. More dives are coming. Peace.